Ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to forgive me for this video not meeting my usual editing standards. I am not at home right now, but simply must insert myself into this Dead by Daylight drama that doesn't affect me in the slightest, before King React Andy himself responds to this first thing in the morning tomorrow. I am trying to record even the most low quality DVD B-roll footage on my laptop is a great way to turn it into an improvised explosive device. Since I'm not trying to assassinate any sitting US senators, you're going to have to make do with the leaked footage of the next licensed DVD chapter. ZANRYU and Scott JUND got into a Twitter argument, and ZANRYU made a video exposing him on YouTube.
Scott JUND's a bit of a toxic hypocrite, so let's talk about it. I recently tweeted about some stuff that happened as a result of tunneling, and nobody cared that they were taking their feelings out on their opponent after the game. All that mattered to them was that I was a killer who brought meta and tunneled, which justified the survivors treating me however they want. Even Scott JUND himself was in on it. Yes, Scott JUND was in the thread calling me a hypocrite and saying that it's fine for salty survivors to vent to their killers.
I don't believe that either Zan or Scott are entirely right, though one is certainly more right than the other. Let's briefly go over their main points, and let's see whether mommy or daddy is the most based.
No, not the beer. The beer. The beer.
Both Zan and Scott call each other hypocrites. Scott calls Zan a hypocrite because he's complaining about survivors bringing strong perks while running meta on a strong killer. Zan is calling Scott a hypocrite for saying camping, tunneling, and slugging isn't toxic, while also saying that if he were to go against a full meta lich, he'd probably make fun of them too.
If I had to go against a meta killer with a meta build, I'd probably make fun of them too.
Damn, I actually agree with Scott here. I mean, not this Scott, but Scott nonetheless.
Things like flashlight blinds, body blocking, and even like tunneling and camping are just things built into the game and are not toxic whether you think they are or not.
I want you to notice two things. First, none of these statements actually contradict each other. Just because Scott doesn't personally like certain playstyles doesn't mean he thinks they're toxic. I also don't like being camped, slugged, or tunneled, but the killer is more than allowed to camp, slug, and tunnel me. It's just a personal preference. Also, nowhere does he say, you deserve it for tunneling. He says Zan deserves criticism for something else, but it isn't tunneling. But it's not just Zan. Scott is also wrong here. If Scott was paying attention, he'd realize that Zan wasn't complaining that the survivors brought strong perks and items. Zan's argument is that these survivors are hypocrites because they're complaining that the killer is playing to win while they're also playing to win, as evidenced by the strong shit they're bringing. And Zan is right here, bitching and moaning that the other side is playing to win while you're also playing to win is unbelievably dumb. So neither Zan nor Scott are hypocrites here. They just misunderstood each other's positions. Next claim.
I don't give two flying naughty words what you have to say.
In case there's any confusion, trauma dumping to your opponent after a game about what a bad time you had is toxic. Sorry you had a bad time, but your feelings are not my responsibility. Cut that shit out.
Zan thinks complaining in the endgame chat is toxic, and Scott thinks Zan is wrong for complaining about this on Twitter. Scott doesn't directly call Zan toxic, but since Toxicity is taking things out of the video game and onto other platforms, like Twitter for example, I'm lumping these two claims together. Once again, I believe they're both wrong. Being salty in endgame chat isn't toxic, it's cringe and pathetic, but until it leaves the Dead by Daylight application and makes its way onto Twitter or your live stream, there is no argument you can make for trauma dumping in endgame chat being toxic. Unsurprisingly, I disagree with Scott here too. ZANRYU is more than welcome to tweet about things other people say about him on his personal Twitter, regardless of whether or not it fuels an us versus them narrative. Alright, enough being difficult, let's go through the shit ZANRYU actually got right.
After this, Scott got into his semantics bullshit asking where the survivors complained, which just confirms he didn't actually fully check the tweet before opening his big mouth. We'll go in order though. The ace hit me with a, what the fuck? I guess that's one way to play the game, which is a passive-aggressive remark against the way I played. There's no positive interpretation of that statement. It's clearly a complaint, and arguing otherwise is just disingenuous semantics. Linnea saying I tunneled and camped and calling me a disgrace is a little harder to defend, and suspiciously enough, was not brought up. He either left it out intentionally because it doesn't support his point, or he didn't read the tweet and was just talking out of his ass.
Zan's just right here. He's also probably right about Scott not reading the tweet before engaging. I also don't understand why he didn't just take the L and move on here. But if Scott wants to stay in the Twitter shit fight, he's more than welcome to.
If you just got yapped at and moved on, we wouldn't be talking right now. Do you see how he just skirts over the fact that I'm the one getting yapped at? You see how he puts the responsibility on me to not talk about how people acted towards me? All because he doesn't want to fuel some us versus them fire? Scott, you genuine, absolute, and complete
ZANRYU misrepresents Scott's argument multiple times in this video, but the claim Scott is making here is that ZANRYU's tweets are going to be used as fuel by both survivor and killer mains to divide our already divided community. And because of that, he should be careful when posting stuff like this. Scott is also wrong. It's not Zan's responsibility to curtail the posts he makes on his social media because other people can take them and use them to fuel their own victimhood narratives. It's neither his intention nor his fucking job. Zan can post whatever the fuck he wants on his personal social media page because it's his personal fucking social media page. He owes you nothing and there's jack shit you can do about it. Even though he's clearly not trying to fuel fires here, he literally could and be well within his rights to do so.
I mean, if you're gonna sit there and tell me you're posting a massively weird tweet featuring a us versus them moment is not adding fuel to the fire, then you're incredibly disingenuous, and there's no point in furthering this conversation.
I told Scott the same as I just told you. It's the people exhibiting the behavior, and not the people exposing it, that are fueling this us versus them fire he's talking about.
Base?
I got nothing to add here. ZANRYU's just right about this. Going after Zan for saying, look at this shitty us versus them behavior, is like going after a journalist for writing about a murder case. That's just dumb.
You're adding fuel to the fire by talking about it. Your defense is that when you complain, it's to your stream instead of to your opponent, as if that makes you better, but you're doing the same thing. No, not even remotely. By talking about or even complaining about it to Twitter or my chat, I'm not directly seeking out my opponent to bother them with my negativity. I'm just talking about what happened in my space, or a space meant for sharing. When these people complain or even just vent at the EDC or someone's stream, they're trying to make themselves feel better by being a nuisance. The difference is the direction of your frustration, and that difference matters.
That's another
Base?
from me, King. He's not taking anything out of game, much less to his opponent. He is keeping his bitching within his own personal space. While Zan is not making any sort of moral superiority claim, if he was, he would totally have the high ground here, and I don't see how you could argue otherwise.
When people bitch at you, you say it's overkill and move on. Great. When people bitch at me, I let them have at it, and I get content out of it. Also great. Neither of those things changes the fact that nobody should be bitching at anybody over how they played a video game. That's the entire point of my tweet, and pretty much every video I make. I showcase that behavior because it is exactly what not to do after a match. And yes, to the people that say I rage bait in salt form, that applies even if someone is trying to elicit a certain reaction from you. They shouldn't be doing that, but you are responsible for your own actions, and you don't have to take the bait.
Well, this guy wants me to get mad, so I should get mad and say shitty things. Oh, that'll show him.
Do you see how stupid that is? If someone is baiting you, that's on them. Anything you do after taking it is on you. You'll be a lot happier if you just ignore it.
While I believe that people are more than within their rights to bitch, at the end of the day, you are personally responsible for your own actions, both in the video game and on the internet. If you fuck up in the video game, that's your fault, not anybody else's. Complaining about your teammates or the killers because you made a fucky wucky and the killer capitalized on it is just straight up delusional. Take some accountability for your own actions, like a grown-ass adult. Also, rage baiting only works when you take the bait.
Well, the difference is I'm actually not bringing sweaty shit, so I'm not a hypocrite. Your build and playstyle is sweatier than anything the survivors brought, by the way.
Scott, the debater, JUND, ladies and gentlemen, those heels are dug in deep. Why are you so caught up on how hard anyone is sweating? Builds and playstyles don't matter. What matters is nobody should be acting out towards the other side just because of what they brought or how they played, especially when they bring meta shit themselves. Justifying other people acting like assholes because someone playing to win makes you an asshole too, by the way.
Scott might not bring sweaty shit, but Zan does, and that's his choice. Zan is allowed to bring whatever he wants in the game because it's in the game. is what I would say if this wasn't a straw man. You'll see a lot of these in the Scott section. It's why I don't talk about at least half the video, because Zan's argue against shit Scott didn't say. If you look at the tweet in context, Scott currently believes that Zan is complaining about survivors bringing flashlights in borrowed time while he's running a full meta lich, which he immediately rescinds in the next tweet when Zan corrects the record. Yet knowing this, ZANRYU is trying to frame this tweet as Scott saying ZANRYU shouldn't be running meta and should play nice like he does. The big problem I have with ZANRYU in this video is that he's constantly misrepresenting Scott's arguments. Scott may be wrong here, but at least he's trying to argue in good faith. ZANRYU is not.
There's hardly anything.
Mr. ZANRYU, the ZANRYU DVD gaming ZANRYU guy, but I ask, do you claim to have never complained ever in your entire life about a survivor? Yeah, man, great question. Very relevant. He's trying so badly to be right here. It was honestly heartbreaking watching Stage 4 Debate Brain take over him live. I hope he can make a full recovery. For the record, debates are fine. It's just that debating against the exposure of bad behavior is a pretty weird choice, especially when doing it under the pretense that bad behavior is okay if it's done to someone playing in a way that you don't like.
Except Scott never fucking said that. He asked if you've ever gotten mad at the video game, which I guarantee you have. Everyone's gotten mad at the fictional video game at least once. There's no Siddhartha Gautama of Dead by Daylight, and if there was, I can tell Zan's not him because instead of answering the question, he dodges and claims Scott's against calling out bad behavior if it happens to someone he doesn't like. The best part is, whether or not Zan's gotten tilted at the game before has nothing to do with the argument itself. The conversation is about sweaty people complaining about other people sweating. I just find it funny how instead of admitting to having a normal reaction to a video game, or explaining the irrelevancy of the question, ZANRYU immediately resorts to slander. Who's got Stage 4 Debate Brain now, huh?
I've tried to be respectful, but it's getting really hard when it's like I'm talking to River Silver Jr. Anyway, he compares me exposing the behavior to the behavior itself, and says I should keep it to myself. Of course, that's not how that works. I shared interactions I had with people, the same as I do with my videos, and the same as I'm doing with this one. If those interactions don't happen, I have nothing to share. People are fully capable of not getting salty, but they do, and thus, my channel exists. Maybe Scott has a point though. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing his debate brain Twitter takes. But I guess it's too late to unring that bell.
Once again, that's not his argument. You can slay strawmen all you want, but the tweets are public and we can literally see what Scott says. His main objection is that you are adding fuel to the us versus them fire by talking about this shit publicly. And to be fair, you kind of are. That's not what you're trying to do, but when you as a killer main constantly bitch about survivors bitching about you, you're going to get people in the comments making this an us versus them thing. Just like how if you were a survivor main who did nothing but bitch about killers bitching about you, then you would get survivors in your mentions, making it a us versus them thing. It's not your intention, it's a consequence of you playing primarily one side in a sweatiest manner as possible, and exposing people from the other side for complaining about you playing sweaty with little to no understanding or nuance. I don't think it's fair to criticize you for that because it's not your intention, but it is a result of your actions, and you tilting out windmills instead of addressing the argument in your video really does not help your case.
Well, if you don't like it, don't tunnel.
As if the killer somehow deserves that treatment over a playstyle. The EGC is not your therapy session, and the killer is not your counselor. Doesn't matter what happened in the game, the player on the other side doesn't deserve your toxicity. It's no wonder there's some huge us versus them issue that's got Scott's panties twisted when there's people trying to scam better help sessions out of Dead by Daylight. He actually walks us back pretty well by saying he just vent to his stream, which is fine, but he also says that some people only have the killer to vent to, heavily implying that he's fine with people bitching at the killer.
Again, he never says this, and I would argue he's not even implying it. But since you want to box with strawmen, let's pretend this actually was Scott's argument. There's nothing wrong with people bitching to you in endgame chat when they didn't have a good time. It's stupid and pointless because obviously nobody cares about their feelings, but it's not toxic and I would love to see you try to argue that it is. Besides, if people trying to scam BetterHelp sessions out of you in EGC really offends you that much, just close endgame chat or leave immediately after the match is over. It can't hurt you if you don't engage. Now, people coming to your stream or Twitter is a different issue entirely, but even then, you can just ban or block them. It's really not a big deal, and I doubt ZANRYU is sensitive enough to actually get triggered by this shit.
Look, dude, if you rank sweaty stuff and play sweaty, don't be surprised when people complain. When you're game, but complaining is normal in my opinion. I've done fewer builds just as sweaty as yours. When people complain, I just say, haha, yeah, overkill, instead of publicly making fun of them to 100,000 people. Damn, the deflection is crazy, and for anyone curious, that's actually how you use the term.
My first
Base?
from Scott's side, he's only saying complaining is normal. He's in no way, shape, or form defending it here. Of course, Zan completely misrepresents that.
When called out for defending toxic actions, Scott just says, well, you played sweaty, so don't be surprised. In his delusional little brain, it's my fault when people want to cry to me because I dared to win a PvP game.
Even like tunneling and camping are just things built into the game and are not toxic whether you think they are or not.
He actually thinks that it's normal for people to whine and cry to their opponent after a loss.
How is his take that it's normal to do this nonsense, but nobody should talk about it? Has Scott always been this weird?
You'll notice that a lot of arguments Zan claims Scott makes don't get covered in this video. That's because Scott doesn't actually make them. Zan either doesn't understand Scott's arguments or is intentionally misrepresenting them. Either way, I'm not going to defend strawmen in this video. Burn as many as you like, I don't give a shit. I doubt Scott does either.
Say, Scott, what's the difference, by the way, between me tweeting about yappers and you streaming them? In both scenarios, we're publicly talking about things people do that we dislike. Actually, I hate to be this guy, but one difference is our size.
That's like I'm talking to River Silver Jr.
I had no clue my tweet would even reach anyone. I've got 100 followers, so I'm basically tweeting into the void, while you average 500 plus viewers on Twitch. So if we're judging severity by audience size, you really should never be speaking negatively about anything ever, this included. Luckily, audience size doesn't matter, and neither does reach outside of the obvious factor of being noticed. What matters is the substance of the message. My message was that it's weird for survivors to cry about the way killers win, despite wanting to win themselves. Clearly, given my small Twitter following, that message resonated with a lot of people because it gained a lot of traction. It didn't blow up because people just hate survivors or because of some us versus them bullshit. It blew up because there's tons of killers just like me that experience nonsense reactions from survivors because of how we played.
I don't have a face cam, but you're just going to have to imagine the smile on my face when Zan accidentally proves Scott's point for him. Say ZANRYU, if you don't have a large Twitter following and your post blows up because lots of killer players are tired of survivor players doing this shitty behavior, wouldn't that be evidence that your tweet added fuel to the us versus them fire, like Scott claimed it would? Whoops. You see, when you fight with strawmen, instead of trying to understand what your opponent is actually saying, you might just accidentally prove them right.
It's not weird to complain that you had a miserable experience against someone sweating. Actually, it's weirder to play like that than be shocked that people don't like it. Alright. If it's normal to complain to your opponent, then it's normal to share that interaction, so you have no point.
Oh look, more us versus them shit. Remember, only one side gets pissed at the other for winning. I'm going to assume this was a mistake, and ZANRYU believes that both sides can get pissed at the other for winning because both sides do get pissed at the other for winning. Because if that's intentional, ZANRYU's just proved Scott's point for him again, ignoring that little oopsie daisy. It is weird to play in a way that you know pisses people off, then bitch on Twitter that people are getting pissed off at you. I don't entirely believe that's what ZANRYU's doing here, but Scott's argument is sound regardless. I don't think people should go out of their way to bitch to ZANRYU, but they are well within their rights to try to scam BetterHelp sessions off of him. And if that truly offends him that much, he should either change his behavior or just block and ban people that give him too much grief. At least, that would be the smart thing to do.
Be careful you don't run into pirates, or that crocodile that nobody likes.
And that's the end of the Twitter chain. The video does go on to cover another Twitter conversation, but
after his recent tweet about his YouTube comments, I'd like to alter my question. Mr. Scott JUND, why is it okay for you to tweet about stuff that happens to you, but not for me to tweet about stuff that happens to me?
it's yet another straw man, so I'm not going to waste time on it here. There is just one more part of ZANRYU's video I would like to touch on.
The whole thing felt pretty out of character from the Scott JUND You know, I guess I don't really know you. Well, I guess I know you a little better after this impromptu debate you wanted to have on Twitter, but I gotta say, the Scott JUND I met seems like an entitled little prick that'll downplay bad actors just to protect his precious narrative.
Really, dude? You got into one argument with Scott JUND and that's all it took for you to switch up on him? That's fucking sad. You two can have a civil disagreement and still get along with each other. You can still enjoy Scott's content and he can still enjoy yours. You getting into a minor Twitter scuffle doesn't change that. I mean, I'm not surprised. There's this weird, you have to agree with me on everything or we can't be friends anymore mentality. And it's absolutely fucking lame. Like, people will literally block you and break off friendships over the most minor disagreements possible. And it is sad. I don't know if people have just gotten way too sensitive, or maybe my friends and I are just weirdos because we disagree on pretty much everything and we'd still take fucking bullets for each other. I don't know, man. I think you should be able to agree to disagree over internet bullshit like this and not take it personally. I'm not saying you can't make content on it, but calling Scott a toxic asshole, misrepresenting his arguments, and saying you no longer know the guy over a minor disagreement is just silly to me.
It seems all our characters are spent.
And at last the trumpeter is relevant. Execute Chris.
I'd say ZANRYU is more right than Scott is here, but I'll have to stand with Scott on this one because of how poorly ZANRYU handled the whole thing. Sorry, Scott fans, but Scott entered and spent 75% of the argument not understanding what ZANRYU's perspective actually was. He made an ass of himself fighting Ghost while trying to argue that it is ZANRYU's responsibility to curtail his private tweets as to not fuel some us versus them mentality. If ZANRYU had presented this all in good faith, he'd be the victor of the situation. But instead, he strawmanned, insulted, and switched up on Scott after accidentally proving Scott's point for him. So now they're both losers. Congratulations, gentlemen. Take this L and learn from it. Those are my thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear yours. Alright, that's it. If I keep writing this script tonight, I'm gonna fall asleep at my fucking computer. So much for this being a quick 5-minute video, eh, lad? There's no point in going after Scott or ZANRYU over this video. I doubt anyone will, but I gotta cover my bases regardless. Scott and Zan are neither bad people nor bad content creators. There's nothing either of them said or did as a reason to switch up on them or stop watching them. They will both continue to grow and make better content in the future, and we can all move on with our fucking lives. This was nothing more than a lesson on how not to present a Twitter argument to your fan base. Take it easy, everyone, and have a nice night.